How can God love me?
What is my purpose?
What happens after death?
Why do bad things keep happening to me?
Who is God?
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of askGHCC. This week's topic is dealing with the subject of divorce, and it comes to us from two different people who ask the questions, first of all, is every divorce a sin? And secondly, is financial hardship biblical grounds for a divorce? First of all, we need to start with the fact that God hates divorce. He made that very clear in the book of Malachi in chapter 3. And if any of you have ever been through the trauma of divorce, you know why he hates it. But God also knows that marriage should be our focus. And that's why I want to take a moment to address that. God intends a marriage to be a covenant between God, a man, and a woman that's lifelong. That covenant is to be a picture of Christ's relationship with the church. A divorce is an assault on that picture. And so God hates divorce, not just for what it does to the people who are hurt by it, but also for the way it destroys the image of what he wanted a marriage to be. But God also knows there are times when a divorce needs to happen. And so he gave the grounds in his word. In Matthew chapter 5 and 19, Jesus addressed the question from the religious leaders, can we divorce for any and every reason? And Jesus told them no, and he introduced what was called the exception clause. He said, except for marital unfaithfulness or except for adultery, if you divorce and remarry, you commit adultery. What Jesus was describing was that a marriage cannot be undone by man, which is why he said, what God has joined together, let no one separate. You cannot tear away the bonds of marriage without feeling that pain. And so what Jesus was teaching was, unless there's been a breach of the marriage covenant by infidelity, sexual unfaithfulness in a marriage, that marriage covenant remains intact, and divorce papers cannot separate that. That's why you may get a divorce in the eyes of man, but in the eyes of God, to be joined to someone else would be adultery, because you're still married in the eyes of God. The only other grounds I know of for a biblical divorce was found in 1 Corinthians 7, when Paul said that if you, as a believer, are married to an unbeliever, and that unbeliever decides to leave you, to abandon you because of your faith, then you are no longer bound. Most people, including myself, take that bound to mean no longer bound in the marriage covenant. You would be released from the marriage, the covenant is severed, and you'd be free to remarry. All other means that lead to a divorce outside of that, as far as I understand it biblically, would be a sin or an unbiblical divorce. Now, you may be sitting there today thinking, well, I had an unbiblical divorce. I didn't know those grounds, and now I'm remarried. Am I in a continual adulterous state? Am I supposed to leave this man or woman that I'm married to? The answer is no. If you have entered into a marriage, God wants that marriage to work. You can't go back and undo it. You can't go back and tie things with a former spouse. The best thing to do is just say, God, in my ignorance, I made these steps. I now understand, and I ask you to forgive me and help me to sanctify my current marriage and make it as strong as it can be. You need to know the marriage you're in right now is the one that God wants to bless. I also wanted to say that we always ought to work to try to strengthen marriage whenever we can. And marital infidelity doesn't equal divorce. Many people work through those traumas and come out on the other side with a strong marriage. If you're going through marital difficulties right now, I would strongly encourage you to get some help. Talk to a pastor, go to a good Christian counseling center. Get some help in making these decisions that can affect not only your life, but the lives of your children and all others around you. There's a lot at stake, and so you need some help in dealing with these difficult issues.